it out till the end. Now that it's raining more than ever, know that we still.
Hi everyone, you're welcome back to my channel today. Thank you so much for stopping by. In this video, we'll be drafting this bustier dress that you can see on your screen. If you're interested, keep on watching and let's get started. The start of this pattern paper is my shoulder line, and on that line I'm going to take half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. I will indicate the 8 inches with a dot. On that dot, I'm going to go down by half of my round armhole measurement, which is also 8 inches. My round armhole measurement is 16 inches. 16 divided by 2 is 8 inches. I'll mark the 8 inches just like you see me doing, and I'll rule a straight line across it. On the dot that I have on the shoulder line, I'm going to go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and I'll slant into the neckline area. The next thing I'll do is to connect from the shoulder slope to meet the armhole line, which is also the chest line, in a straight line. After doing that, this is what I have. The next thing I'll do is to start taking my point. So the distance from my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches. I'm going to mark the 10 inches. So in order for me to get a straight line, I'm going to mark the 10 inches all the way to the end of this paper, and I'll rule a straight line across. So I have the chest line and the bust line. The next line I will take is the distance from my shoulder to my under bust point, which is 13 inches. I'll mark 13 inches to the end of this paper, and I'll go ahead and rule a straight line across. After doing that, I'm going to label the line my under bust line. The next point is the distance from my shoulder to my waistline, which is also going to serve as the half length. Mine is 16 inches. I'm going to mark 16 inches all the way around, and I'll rule a straight line across. After doing that, I'm going to label the line my waistline. The next thing I'll do is to place my tape on this straight line right here, and I'm going to divide what I have into 2 equal halves. What I have here is 7 inches. Half of 7 inches is 3.5 inches. I will indicate 3.5 inches with a dot. On that dot, I'm going to come inward like this by half an inch. I'll also indicate the half an inch mark. Okay. On the chest line, I'm going to place my bust circumference divided by 4, which is 8.5 inches. I'll also indicate that point. From that point, I'm going to use my ruler to connect from the shoulder slope to meet the half an inch, and from that point to meet the mark that I have on the chest line. Next thing I'll do is to take my bust band measurement, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. Mine is 4 inches. I'll be adding half inch to that measurement. So on the waistline, I'll mark 4.5 inches. On the under bust line, I'll mark 4.5 inches, and on the bust line, I'll mark 4.5 inches. After doing that, I'm going to connect the 3 dots into a straight line. Next thing I'll do is to take 1 inch on both sides of this straight line. So I'll take 1 inch on the center front, and I'll take 1 inch on the side front. On the under bust line also, I'll take 1 inch on both sides. After doing that, I'm going to connect the dots into a straight line. The next thing I'll do is to go down on the bust line by 1 inch, and I'll indicate the 1 inch mark. After doing that, I'm going to use the curved part of my ruler to connect from the under bust point to meet the 1 inch mark. In case you don't have a curved ruler, go ahead and use your free hand, but make sure this line is not a straight line. I'll connect on this side, and I'll also go ahead and connect on the other side. So this dress is an off-shoulder dress. Go ahead and determine how deep you want the neckline to be. For me, I'm going to go down by 6 inches. 6 inches is okay for me. So I'm going to mark 6 inches and I'll rule a straight line across. So this new line is going to be the chest line. That is where the chest line of our dress is going to be. So if you want it deeper, you can do 7 inches or 7.5 inches, and if you want it higher, you can do 5 inches or 4.5 inches. So this is going to be my new chest line. The next thing I'm going to do is to extend the dart leg to meet the chest line. So the nipple to nipple measurement, half of my nipple to nipple measurement that I took on the other lines was 4.5 inches. I'll mark the 4.5 inches on my new chest line, and then I'm going to extend the dart leg to meet the chest line like this. After doing that, guys, next thing I'm going to do is to tighten my over bust. On the bust line, I'll go up by 1 inch, and on both sides of the straight line, I'll be taking 1 inch. Okay, so I'll take 1 inch here and I'll take 1 inch on the side front. After doing that, I'm going to now connect to meet the 1 inch mark that I have above the bust line. So after taking in my darts, I'm going to shade out this part. That is where we are going to cut out. The next thing I'm going to do, guys, is start placing my measurements. On the chest line, I already have my bust circumference divided by 4. I'm going to replace this dart. The dart is 2 inches, and I'm going to add 1.5 inches as my stitching allowance. On the under bust line, I'm going to place my under bust circumference divided by 4. I'll replace the dart, which is also 2 inches, and I'll add 1.5 inches as my stitching allowance. On the waistline, I'll place my waist circumference divided by 4. I'll replace the 2 inches dart and I'll add 1.5 inches as my stitching allowance. After doing that, I'm going to connect the dots like this. So guys, on the center front, if you check the thumbnail well, you see that it has a sweetheart neckline. So it depends on how deep you want it to be. I placed my tape on the chest line and I went down by 1.5 inches. I'm going to connect it in a slant like this to meet this dart leg. That is how deep I want it to be. Okay, so after doing that, I'm going to go ahead and cut. So pay close attention so you know where to cut. After cutting, guys, this is what I have. I'm going to label the center front and the side front, and while cutting, the center front should be on fold. For the back, I'm going to go ahead and take my zipper allowance. So I'll be taking 2 inches for my zipper allowance. I'll mark 2 inches all the way to the length of this pattern paper, and I'm going to connect all the dots into a straight line. After doing that, I'll label this part my zipper allowance. Next thing I'm going to do is to take half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. I'm taking the measurement after the zipper allowance. I'll mark the 8 inches with a dot. After doing that, I'm going to go down on that dot by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and then I'll connect from that point into the neckline area. The next thing I'll do is to go down by half of my round armhole measurement. Mine is 8 inches. I'll mark the 8 inches like this and I'll rule a straight line across. After doing that, I'll connect from the shoulder slope to meet this line that I have right here. So the next thing I'll do is to start taking my points. The distance from my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches, and the distance from my shoulder to my waist point, which is the half length, is 16 inches. We don't need the under bust for this back, So I'm going to mark 10 inches all the way to the end of this pattern paper, and I'll also mark 16 inches to the end of this pattern paper. After doing that, I went ahead to rule straight lines across the points. So I have the chest line, the bust line, and the waistline. On the waistline, I'm going to take my bust band measurement, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. Mine is 4 inches. I'll mark the 4 inches on the waistline and the 4 inches on the bust line, and I'll connect the two dots into a straight line. After doing that, I'm going to go down by 6 inches, just like we did for the front. So this is going to be the back neckline. I'll mark the 6 inches all the way around, and then I'll rule a straight line across. So this is going to serve as my new chest line. The next thing I'll do is to extend my dart leg to meet the new chest line like this. After doing that, guys, I'm going to go down from the new chest line by 2 inches to meet the old chest line. Okay, I'll go down by 2 inches. After doing that, I'm going to take half an inch on both sides of this straight line. So we are doing the normal dart for the back. I'll take half an inch on the center front and half an inch on the side front, and then I'll connect from there to meet the dots that I have on the chest line. The next thing I'll do is to start placing my measurements. So on the chest line, I'll place my bust circumference divided by 4. I'll indicate that measurement with a dot. After doing that, I'm going to connect from the new chest line to meet that dot. Okay, but before I do that, I'm going to be adding my stitching allowance of 1.5 inches, and then I'll place the curved part of my ruler. I'll connect from the chest line to meet the dots that I have on the chest line like this. So we already have our armhole. The next thing I'm going to do is to place my waist circumference divided by 4 on the waistline. I'll place the dart of 1 inch and I'll add 1.5 inches for my stitching allowance. After doing that, I'm going to go ahead and connect. The next thing I'll do is to adjust this zipper area. So I have 2 inches on the zipper allowance. I'm going to reduce it by 1 inch on the waistline. I'll mark 1 inch and I'll connect from that point in a slant like this. I'm doing this to avoid zip bulge. So I'll connect like this. I'll also straighten out the chest line and the waistline just like this. After doing that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and cut. After cutting, this is what I have. So I don't want the back neckline to be just straight, so I'm going to go down by 2 inches, or I went down by 1.5 inches, and then I'm going to use my ruler to connect in a curve to meet the armhole. So if you want the back of your dress to be straight, you don't have to do this step. I just want a little bit of curve at the back, and I went ahead to trim it out. So this is what we have for the back, and these are the pattern paper for the front. I'm going to place them on this fabric and I'm going to cut. Okay, so for this tutorial I'll be using 3 yards of Ankara fabric. So for the skirt part, I'm going to fold my fabric into 2 like this, and then I'm going to fold it over, leaving my zipper allowance on the opened edge of this fabric. So this is how I am folding my fabric, and I'll leave my zipper allowance. I'm using this small fabric to illustrate because my table is quite small, but this is how I folded my fabric for the skirt. So guys, my fabric is folded into 4 and I left 2 inches as my zipper allowance, just like I did for the upper bodice. So what I'm going to do is to place my tape on the waistline, which is the start of this fabric, and I'll go down by 9 inches. This is the distance from my waist to my hip. So I'm going to mark So measure the distance from your waist to your hip and take that measurement. After doing that, I went ahead to rule a straight line across and I labeled the line my hip, and the start of this fabric is my waistline. The next thing I'll do is to take my waist circumference divided by 4. I'll mark that. I'm going to add 1 inch for that and 1.5 inches for stitching allowance. So look at the way I'm placing my tape. I'm taking my measurements backwards after the zipper allowance, so that when I open my fabric up, we have the part that have the zipper allowance, and we also have the center front, which is on fold. I hope you understand. On the hip line, I'll take my hip circumference divided by 4 and I'll add 1.5 inches for my stitching allowance. After doing that, I'm going to connect the mark that I have on the waistline to meet the mark on the hip line, just like this. After connecting, I'm going to place my tape on the hip line, and what I have is 11.5 inches. So on the base of the skirt, I'm going to minus 2 inches from this 11.5 inches because the base of the skirt is supposed to be penciled. So I'm going to mark 9.5 inches on the base of the skirt, and then I'm going to now connect from the hip to meet the base of the skirt in a slanted form. After doing that, I'll go ahead and cut. After cutting, guys, I'll go ahead and notch the hip, and I'll also take in my dart. For the dart, I'm going to take half of my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 4 inches. I'm doing that on the front pattern. I'm not extending the 4 inches to the zipper allowance. I'll indicate the 4 inches with a dot, and then I'll go down, okay, by like 3 inches. 3 inches is the length of the dart. I'll go down by 3 inches and I'll connect like this into a straight line. After doing that, I'm going to take half an inch on both sides of the dart, and then I'll connect. After connecting, I'm just going to notch the dart area. This will make it easier for you to take in your darts when you're sewing. So after doing that, I'm going to use my fabric to cut on my lining piece. So guys, I'm going to open my fabric up for you guys to see. This is the front, which is on fold, and I have the 2 back piece. So I'm going to fold the front piece into 2 equal halves like this, and I'm going to go down by 1 inch, and then I'll slant from that point to the waist area. I'm doing this so that the waist of this dress will sit perfectly. I'll slant like this. So make sure you don't get to the end of the waist, because the waist of the front and that of the back is supposed to be the same. So I'll slant like this and I'll cut it out, and then I'll retake my dart, which is 4 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and notch it. Yeah, after doing that, we are done with the skirt part. I'm just going to place the fabric on my lining piece and I'll cut on the lining. For the front, I went ahead to place my pattern paper on my fabric, and I added half an inch on all the sides, and on the base I added 1 inch as my stitching allowance. So I'll go ahead and cut. After cutting, I'll go ahead and iron hair stay and my pad to the front. Okay, yeah guys, that is all. This video is getting too long. That is all for the pattern drafting tutorial. Stay tuned for the sewing tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video. Leave your questions in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next one.